Are you ready? Get set. Let's go. Now that we've established why it is important to tip, we're going to talk about how much you should tip and why what you might think is a good tip is actually an insult. Okay. This video is going to end up a lot longer than I wanted it to be, and I'm sorry, but hopefully it'll be somewhat entertaining while informative, because I rant and I'm kind of annoying, yet humorous if you don't have to deal with me in person. So, at least that's what I've been told. So, we don't keep every penny of the tip you leave us. But David, that is your tip. I left it for you. Why don't you keep it? Good question. Here's why we don't keep it. In the restaurant industry, it is accepted that there is something called a tip share. Here's the way that this works. At the end of the day, my sales are X amount. In my 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-hour shift, I sold this amount of money in sales. Okay? So let's make math easy and say $1,000. It's typically what I do in the restaurant I work at currently in a shift. So if I ring in $1,000 in sales, 3% of that amount I have to give back to the restaurant from the money I was tipped. So that's $30 that I don't get to keep of the money I made that day. Now you might be saying, but David, we didn't ring in $1,000 in sales, so why should that $30 reflect on us? Because it adds up. You may be $2 of that 30, but it adds the fuck up. Okay, so here is why. There are a lot of people who help you besides your server and your server alone. The hosts have to take you to the table. Part of their job is making sure that table is clean before you get there, based on the restaurant, that they don't take you to a dirty table and make you stand and watch while a busser cleans it. That's just unprofessional and rude, and you don't want to see that. They have to make sure that you get a station in proper rotation where we take you for a reason. Remember, I'm going to sit there instead, because that server may have just been sat and not able to get to you right away. So they're looking out to make sure you get the best service possible. They answer your phone calls. They take your reservations or your name for call-ahead seating. They sell you gift cards. Sometimes, in some restaurants, they take to-go orders. There is a lot that hosts do to serve you, so they deserve some of your tip just for walking you to the table. Okay? You don't pay them, you pay me. So now I have to pay them, right? The bussers clean your table. Before you sit down, you want that table to be clean. You don't want to look at somebody else's dirty dishes or have that kid's little spittle, because remember we talked about your fucking children and they threw the sugar packets all over the table and under the floor, and maybe they sprayed ketchup and they colored in crayons. Well, you don't want to look at that shit when you sit down. You want a clean place to eat, just like you clean your kitchen table when you eat at home. Or if you don't want to, you take your plate and you eat in the living room, but it's a clean plate, right? So we want to make sure your tables are clean before you sit down, and after you're done eating, that table has to get cleaned again. That's the busser's job, so that way I can serve you. Oh, I have a message. Sorry, meant to turn that on silent. So the busser is serving somebody, or I'm serving somebody else, and the table needs to be cleaned. So the busser is there to clean your table. Okay? I have to pay them. Right? You didn't give them the tip, but I have to, from what you left me. When you order a drink from the bar, a draft beer, a bottle beer, we don't have some magic refrigerator in the back that we get that from. We have to ring it in the computer. So don't think that because you ordered 10 drinks and we charged you for all 10 of them, we didn't say, oh, thanks for the business. We're going to slide you a drink. Maybe the bartender does that. They're not supposed to. They can get fired for stealing from the restaurant because no one paid for that alcohol. But if we can't do that because the bartender won't make us a drink unless we ring it in. Why? Because we tip out the bartender on sales. So they want more money, right? Plus, it's a rule. They can get fired for making a drink for free. So don't get mad at us and say we're not going to tip him as much because he didn't give us a free drink like the bartender would have. It's not our call. But that bartender makes your drink. You don't tip that bartender. I have to tip the bartender from what you tip me. Some restaurants, it's 5% of the bar sales, right? So if I only rang up $100 worth of alcohol that night, or bottled water, then I pay them $5. If I don't ring up any alcohol that night, then I don't pay them at all. That's rare. Most restaurants, it's part of that 3% in your sales. So even though maybe $100 of that $1,000 I rang in is alcohol, I still have to pay the bartender on the $1,000 in sales. So what ends up happening is even if you don't get a drink from the bar, the possibility that you might, I have to pay the bartender, right? And yes, but David, you entered into that agreement when you went to work for that employer. I understand that. But here is why the minimum tipping is where it's expected to be. So I have to pay all of these people. Sometimes there's a separate food runner. That's a separate tip. Maybe they only work on busy Friday and Saturday nights. So when I check out, I have to throw a minimum of another $5 on top of the tip share, or 10 in some restaurants. 8 in some. It's usually between 5 and 10 as a minimum. And if they bust their ass for you, you give them more because they're making sure your food gets out there hot because I'm busy as fuck on a Friday night. So, see, all this is to make you happy. You see how this works? So I'm tipping out even more than that 3%, that $30 every day. My tip share today at work, $47. Of the money that I made, I didn't get to keep, right? But I have to declare it to the IRS and my taxes. They don't care that I gave it back to the restaurant. They just care that I made it. You can like this or subscribe or comment or something like that, I guess, if you want.